This is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, retold at the intermediate level. Chapter 2, Mr. Collins Comes to Stay. The following morning, a letter came from Jane to Elizabeth. My dearest Lizzie, I don't feel very well this morning. I got wet yesterday. My friends here at Netherfield say I must stay here until I'm better. They have called the doctor. Don't worry, I just have a sore throat and a headache. Love from your sister, Jane. Elizabeth read the note to her family, and Mr. Bennet was the first to speak. Well, my dear, he said to his wife, if Jane dies, at least she was doing her duty as you asked. Nobody dies of cold, replied his wife. She can stay at Netherfield until she's better. She will have more time to get to know Mr. Bingley. Elizabeth decided to visit her sister at Netherfield. She decided to walk. It was a beautiful day, although the road was very wet and muddy. Kitty and Lydia walked as far as Meryton with her, and then Elizabeth continued to Netherfield alone. It was another 2 miles. When she arrived, the servant took her to the breakfast room. Mr. Bingley's sisters were very surprised when they realized that Elizabeth had walked from Longbourn. They didn't like the fact that her dress was very muddy. Mr. Bingley was very kind, but Mr. Darcy was very quiet. He was thinking about her face and her bright eyes. Elizabeth went upstairs to see her sister. As soon as she left the room, Caroline Bingley laughed. Did you see her dress? I know, the mud, replied her sister. Well, Mr. Darcy, do you still admire her fine eyes? Asked Caroline. Yes, I do. The walk made them brighter. This was not the answer Caroline Bingley had hoped to hear. Later, after Elizabeth had seen Jane, Mr. Bingley suggested that Elizabeth stay until Jane was better. In the evening, Elizabeth stayed with Jane while the ladies and gentlemen had dinner. Conversation at the dinner table was mainly about the Bennet family. Jane Bennet is a sweet girl, said Caroline, but the family is very low. Their uncles don't have estates, they work. They live in a moderate area of London. That's not a problem for me, cried Mr. Bingley. I think the Bennet girls are nice and they are beautiful. Yes, but they can't hope to make a good marriage with such low connections, added Mr. Darcy. Bingley didn't reply. After dinner, Elizabeth joined them in the dining room for coffee. Everyone was playing cards, so Elizabeth started to read. Miss Bingley decided to show Elizabeth up. Mr. Darcy, do tell me, is your sister Georgina as tall as I am yet? No, she's about Miss Elizabeth Bennet's height, he replied. I really want to see her again, continued Caroline Bingley. She's so clever and so beautiful, and she plays the piano so well. Mr. Bingley joined in the conversation. All young ladies are so clever. They paint, they draw, they make clothes, and all types of things. Mr. Darcy disagreed. I only know 6 clever women, he said. Yes, said Caroline Bingley. A really clever woman must know a lot about music, singing, drawing, and modern languages, and she must have an aristocratic air in the way she walks and the way she speaks. Of course, Miss Bingley was talking about herself. She thought she was much cleverer than Elizabeth. Mr. Darcy then added his opinion. Yes, all of that, but in addition, she must read a lot to improve her mind. I'm surprised you know any clever women, said Elizabeth. I don't know anyone as clever as that. And she went upstairs to see Jane. The following morning, Jane was much better. Just after breakfast, she had a visitor. Mrs. Bennet came to see her with Kitty and Lydia. Everyone sat in the morning room. Conversation was very difficult because Mrs. Bennet decided to be very rude to Mr. Darcy. Elizabeth was embarrassed at her mother's rudeness. She was also embarrassed that Lydia seemed out of control. Kitty behaved the same as Lydia, as usual. The two youngest Bennet girls chatted about the militia and balls. They asked Mr. Bingley to hold a ball at Netherfield, and he agreed. Eventually, Mrs. Bennet, Kitty, and Lydia left, leaving Jane and Elizabeth at Netherfield. Caroline Bingley and her sister then gossiped unkindly about the Bennet family. The following evenings were very similar to the first evening. Elizabeth thought that Miss Bingley wanted Mr. Darcy's attention all the time. When Mr. Darcy was writing a letter to his sister, Elizabeth smiled, as Miss Bingley complimented Mr. Darcy on his writing. It was so fast and so beautiful. Then Miss Bingley offered to mend his pen when it broke. If everyone was reading a book, Miss Bingley watched Mr. Darcy instead of reading her own. One evening, she even invited Elizabeth to walk around the room so that Mr. Darcy could admire her figure. When Elizabeth joked about Mr. Darcy's faults, Miss Bingley insisted that he was perfect. "I have many faults," replied Mr. Darcy. "I have a bad temper, I'm proud, but I don't think pride is always wrong. I'm quite shy, and I don't change my mind. If I have a bad opinion of someone, I never change it." "That's terrible," replied Elizabeth. "That means you never forgive people." "And you pretend not to understand people," said Mr. Darcy. He was smiling. Miss Bingley was a little worried. She began to think that Mr. Darcy really liked Elizabeth. "Let's play some music, Louisa," she said quickly to her sister. After a few days, Jane was feeling much better, and she and Elizabeth decided to go home to Longbourn. Caroline and Louisa said they were sorry that the Bennet sisters had to go home, but Elizabeth was certain that they were very happy. Mr. Darcy was happy that Elizabeth was going home. He was beginning to like her too much. Mr. Bingley was very sad. He asked Jane to stay for at least a few more days, but Jane had decided. Mr. Bennet was happy to see the girls back at Longbourn, as the evening conversation had been very boring without them. Mrs. Bennet was very irritated. She thought the girls had come home too soon. She had hoped that Mr. Bingley would ask Jane to marry him. Mary was happy because she wanted to talk to them about a book she was reading. Kitty and Lydia were delighted too. They wanted to talk about the militia officers in Meryton. The routine at Longbourn soon continued as normal. At breakfast the next morning, Mr. Bennet spoke to his wife. "I hope dinner will be good because we'll have a guest." "Who? Oh, who?" asked his wife excitedly. "A gentleman and a stranger," replied Mr. Bennet. "Mr. Bingley?" exclaimed Mrs. Bennet. "No, it isn't Mr. Bingley. It's a person I have never met before." His wife and daughters were very curious. "It's Mr. Collins, my cousin," he said. "He's a very important visitor, as he will inherit this house when I die. Before you ask, he'll be here at 4 o'clock to satisfy your curiosity. I think, however, that he may be a very silly young man." At 4 o'clock exactly, Mr. Collins arrived. He looked extremely serious. He was wearing the typical clothes of a clergyman. He complimented Mrs. Bennet on having 5 very beautiful daughters. He admired the furniture and the house. He also complimented Mrs. Bennet on the cooking. It was very clear, however, that the most important person in his life was his patron, Lady Catherine de Bourgh. All through dinner, he talked about Lady Catherine, her great house, and her daughter. He obviously spent a lot of his time thinking about the great Lady Catherine. "She is a very great lady," he said. "She sometimes drives past my house in her carriage. I'm always ready to run out so that I can speak to her. She is proud, from a very noble family, but she often invites me to Rosings Park for dinner. Rosings Park, you understand, is one of the finest country estates in England." Mr. Bennet and Elizabeth enjoyed listening to Mr. Collins because he was indeed very silly. The other members of the family thought he was boring. Jane was very kind to him because Jane was kind to everyone. Mr. Collins had come to Longbourn for one reason. Lady Catherine de Bourgh wanted Mr. Collins to find a wife. He had a good house near Rosings Park, and he had enough money to get married. He knew that Longbourn estate would belong to him one day. He thought that it was a good idea to marry one of the Bennet daughters. He didn't change his mind when he met them. He decided to marry Jane Bennet. The next morning, however, he had a short conversation with Mrs. Bennet. She explained about Jane and Mr. Bingley. Mr. Collins was a little disappointed. But then Mrs. Bennet suggested Elizabeth as a possible future Mrs. Collins. He was perfectly happy with this change. Later, the Bennet girls decided to go for a walk into Meryton. Mr. Collins decided to go with them. He talked about Rosings and Lady Catherine de Bourgh all the way into the village. When they arrived, Kitty and Lydia saw one of the officers they knew. He was talking to a tall, handsome young man. Soon the officer was introducing the man as Mr. George Wickham, a new officer in the militia. The Bennet girls were very happy to meet Mr. Wickham. As well as being handsome, he was very polite. He was also very good at conversation. They were pleased to meet such a gentleman. While they were talking, Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley came into the street on their horses. They bowed to the Bennet sisters. Mr. Darcy was trying not to look at Elizabeth when he suddenly saw their new friend, Mr. Wickham. The two men were obviously very shocked. Mr. Darcy was very angry, and Mr. Wickham was very embarrassed. Mr. Bingley didn't seem to see. He asked Jane how she was feeling. Then he and Mr. Darcy rode away. There was obviously something strange between Darcy and Wickham. Elizabeth was very curious.